Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast, and we are under 48 hours away from Illinois football starting the 2021 college football season against Nebraska. 12:20 kickoff on Fox. So a national spotlight game. Brett Bielema's on Sports Center. He's going on every radio show in Chicago, St. Louis this week, and it's all leading up to this game. And I feel like on this podcast, we have broken down this game quite enough. Jay Lehman helped me break it down. We're talking Mike Schaefer from Nebraska. So Joey Wagner, I figured we'd have a little fun on this Thursday, have a little fun about the whole season and make our bold predictions for this season. But before we get there, just a few little notes from Brett Bielema. Sounds like they're going to have about 40 recruits on campus. I've talked with several of the commits. About half the class of 2022 is going to be on campus. So we'll get some 2023 kids down here as well. And he updated, I know there's been some rumors of some injuries, and I guess we'll finally find out at game time, but Brett Bielema said that Jordan Slaughter, who's out for the season with an ankle fracture, and Marquez Beeson, who's coming back from a hamstring injury, are the only guys out. So before we get to game time, any final thoughts about this game against Nebraska, Joey?
This is a test of how much I'm going to trust Brett Bielema on game weeks, right? Like, well, let's see if all this. Right now, I have no reason to not believe him, right? I mean, he's not lied to us that we know of yet. So this will be a good test of the trust we have. But the more we get closer to this, Jeremy, this is so much of, can Illinois finally stop or slow or contain or make life somewhat difficult for Adrian Martinez, right? Like, that's what I keep coming back to every time I think of this game. Is
Scott Frost did it last year, right? He did the job for Illinois by having Adrian Martinez in the sideline, which made no sense.
Yeah, and I keep, I know there's maybe some, we'll see what the offense looks like, blah, blah, blah. But to me, this comes down so much to Adrian Martinez, and he has just been a miserable person for Illinois to have to see for 2 years, the third inexplicably not so. But I just keep coming back to that, man. As we get closer, that's the way my mind keeps ending.
Yeah. Well, even when he came in the game last year, he was far better. Don't forget, it's like, wait, if this guy were playing all game, maybe they would have had a chance against Illinois. Maybe they would have won yet again against Lovie Smith. For me, Joey, I keep coming back to, and this is going to be my storyline in my preview and picks. It's going to go up later tonight. I keep going back to what an opportunity this is for Illinois. I think for Nebraska, this is a really nerve-wracking game, but there are so many Illinois fans, kind of like that North Carolina game for Lovie Smith this first year, that are excited, that want to see this. You have a national stage against a Power 5 opponent, let alone a Big Ten West divisional opponent that you're trying to leap in the Big Ten. You have a great opportunity with the national spotlight on you, a chance to get a 1-0 start, a chance to maybe get a recruiting boost from this, and really a chance to get fans bought in, right? And sell tickets for the following weeks and all that revenue that is so important to the athletic department after losing money last year because of the pandemic. But also just to instill some belief in that room. Like, I think football players and football teams are a little bit more resilient than fans. But fans would bail, like some who are excited if they lose and lose by a couple of scores. I think Illinois football can bounce back from one loss. It is one of 12 games, but there is a level of excitement that you could get from a 1-0 start. And then if you can follow that up at UTSA with a 2-0 start, people start talking about Brett Bielema, and they could sell that in recruiting where they're already doing relatively well, but maybe they could take it up another level. So I keep coming back to like how big of an opportunity this is for Brett Bielema, especially with so many seniors back and a winnable opponent in Nebraska. Not that you should take them lightly because they do have some talent.
I also think, and I've talked to some people about this, like a lot of people think Illinois is a basketball school, and there's enough reason to think that. And, it always ends up being the middle of October and you get the Twitters, is it basketball season yet? But I don't think football fans are that far away from jumping all the way onto this bandwagon here. I just think they need a reason to, and it's been really hard for them to find that reason. I mean, I don't think Illinois has to go 3-1, 3-0 for fans to come back. I think they get the first one and they'll at least buy a little bit of good graces with the fans. And I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but I don't think football fans are like far away from jumping on board. And I agree with this is huge to kind of build that.
Well, and that's the thing about Illinois is past times they've done that, like 0-1, who they're celebrating this weekend. they followed that up with a non-bowl season, right? You go 10-2, go to the Sugar Bowl and win the Big Ten championship, and then you fall on your face. After the Rose Bowl, they go 5-7. They lose to Bill Cubit in Western Michigan in Detroit at a mostly empty Ford Field. Like, you just can't sustain that momentum. Even Lovie Smith, as you win 4 games in a row, including 2 of the best games I've ever seen against Wisconsin and Michigan State, you follow that up with 3 straight losses and then a 2-6 season. So, yeah, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And while you can make a better second impression or third or eighth impression, this is a great opportunity for Illinois and Brett Bielema. It's not the end all be all, but certainly if you win, feels like you got a great chance here, not only for this season, but just for the coming months of what your program can do. All right, Joey, let's get into some bold predictions. Should we start with the macro or the micro? Like, should we start with our season predictions or should we go with like the little pieces? What do you think?
Let's go with the season, man. Then we'll zone in after that. Let's do it.
All right, Joey, I'll let you go first since people are going to love what you have to say.
Look, so, oh man, now you make it sound like, yeah, get a load of this guy. I think they're going to go to a bowl game, and I'll tell you, Jeremy, I was reading your season picks here, and it was like a thriller, dude. It's like, okay, they're at 5 and I think you had them at 5-3, maybe, if I'm not mistaken.
I had them at 4-2, and then at some point 5-4, with the chance to clinch bowl eligibility in the last 3 games. It's a very difficult stretch of games.
It is, and I'm reading that, I'm like, what's going to happen here? Like, I could have just scrolled to the bottom, but I read it, and I don't know how they're going to do it. And I think the only ones that I would look at this and like, they're going to win this game is Charlotte. I mean, if not, boy, that's well,
and tough. Remember Charlotte 2 years ago, like Will Healy was this big name. Like, I think we had him like, hey, this is a guy we got to have on my list back in 2019 when Illinois was 2-4, because look what he's doing at Charlotte. So, but they struggled last year, had a lot of COVID disruptions. But what I'm saying is, like, Charlotte, you should beat when you're Illinois, but they did have a good year 2 years ago.
They did, and I think like. I keep looking at like last year's non-con schedule before it was wiped away and how great of an opportunity. This is not that. This is not that at all. This is tough. Like, but if you're trying to build this, if you're a Power 5 Big Ten team and you don't want to be at the basement of the Big Ten, people shouldn't step back and say, wait, are you sure when you say they should beat UTSA? Right? I mean, it's just what Big Ten teams are supposed to do. So I think the non-con, if you can go 2-1, I mean, 3-0, Virginia's, they're pretty solid, really. I mean, probably overlooked a little bit like UTSA, but
Virginia's kind of what Illinois wants to be, right? Like this program that struggled for years and finally has found some stability. And like last year, they had a disappointing year and they were 5-5.
Yeah, that's meanwhile, people read your predictions like, wait a second, I'm not going to give too much away. We had 5 wins, and people are like, oh man, what a year this would be. So, I don't know how they're going to get there. I really don't, but I just, until at least 3:00 on Saturday, I have enough to just the listening we've done. And I mean, look, Brett's record gives him the benefit of the doubt. I understand Arkansas, and someone's going to come screaming in Arkansas this, Arkansas. I get that. Like, I get it. That happened. I just think he's got a plan. I think he's executed it. And I don't think they're going to upset Penn State at all. I don't think they're going to upset Wisconsin. They probably won't beat Iowa, right? Like, those are 3 not easy games. But I think the rest of them you could look at and be like, 1, don't get blown out. That party has happened far too many times. And 2, I just don't think these are like no way, no how games for Illinois on those days. Again, 3:00 on Saturday, I'm deleting this pod from the internet. This never happened. But for right now, I think the road exists.
Yeah, like I think there's a reason people outside of Illinois are low on them, right? Because Illinois just hasn't been good. They haven't been good. They haven't been for a long time. There's not a lot of certain NFL draft picks. I don't know if there's really any right now on this team. Like, I feel good about Vidarian Lowe. I feel good. Like, Roderick Perry should be in a camp. Blake Hayes should be in a camp, right? Like, Tony Adams will be in a camp. Jake Hansen. Like, but how many guys are certain NFL draft picks? I don't know. I don't know if I can say that right now. I feel like you got a lot of guys who are, 5th round projections to undrafted free agents. But you have a lot of those guys, which is really interesting. I feel like there's 12 guys who could be on that list alone, which is an improvement for Illinois. But like, I feel confident in my bold prediction being they cover this over under of 3.5. Like, I have very little doubts of that, because even last year, Joey, They were 2-6 in an 8-game schedule that was pretty difficult, right? And they had Ohio State in the schedule, so it probably would have been 2-7. But like COVID disrupted that year. Like I still feel like last year at full strength, they would have won against Purdue or had a good game, like a competitive game against Minnesota. There's enough talent here that they should find a couple Big Ten wins. And then with UTSA and Charlotte on the schedule, crossovers at home against Maryland and Rutgers, I just feel like 4 wins should be my minimum of expectation. So if they don't get to that number, I'd be concerned about what's going on here. But like I predicted 5 wins. And I could have easily been the real optimist and said bowl game. Sure, that's definitely that should be my expectation. But maybe it's the burn of last year a little bit, or maybe it's just the understanding that the Big Ten is better. Like Rutgers is not an easy win. Maryland is not an easy win. Purdue is not an easy win. Nebraska is not an easy win. And go on and on and on. Like Minnesota is way better than it used to be. And Iowa, Northwestern, haven't gone anywhere. I think Penn State's going to be really good this year. And of course, Wisconsin, outside of 2019, has owned Illinois. So there's just a lot of tough games. And I feel like injuries for this team could really hurt in certain spots. So, well, I feel really bullish about this staff and what they could do long term and really how they can get the most out of this group. What is the most out of this group? I think it could be 7 wins if everything falls right. I think it could be 4. If things don't go exactly as planned and they lose some close games. So I kind of split the difference and went with 5, but I think they cover. I think they cover because I think this staff will put this team and this roster in better positions to succeed than Lovie Smith and his staff did last year.
Agreed. And I think the injuries is a huge thing, right? Like if I keep in my mind replaying those end of the season Northwestern games where there's just like literally almost nobody left at some, especially the skill positions. And, we've heard a lot of good things. And some injuries are just freak accidents, right? Like those happen, unfortunately. But we've heard a lot of good things about how Tank Wright prepares to try to withstand the grind of a 12 or what they hope is probably 13 or more game season. Not or more, probably 13 would be a good spot for them. But if they get to that, those final weeks and they're relatively healthy, build a statue of Tank Wright, right? I mean, seriously,
think about what they had at linebacker late last year or wide receiver 2 years ago. Remember, like Matt Robinson had an awful game against Northwestern, but who was he throwing to? Like he barely had anyone available. And then last year, Michael Marquez is starting a linebacker late in the year.
Yeah, it's just been really, really rough for them. But I think there are really, considering 2 years ago, there was like no positions I think that they could have withstood injuries, right? Like there was almost none. Now, if you have 1 or 2 on the offensive line, the world's not caving in. I don't think. I think there are enough pieces that you can.
2 year in trouble. 2 years.
2 year in trouble, yeah. But I think there are enough pieces you can sustain one. I think linebacker, inside linebacker, if one of those guys goes down, you don't love it, but there's guys there. I think running back is a similar situation, but not much more after that, man. There just cannot be.
Corner, wide receiver, offensive line, safety. I mean, you got a couple guys at safety, but like how good are they? I don't know. Outside linebacker, absolutely. Like the front on defense and offense, I'm a little bit concerned about, and wide receiver and DB. Like quarterback, I feel like if Brandon Peters goes out, you got a guy who gives you a chance, right? In Art Sikowski, because I think he'd been. He gave Rutgers a chance last year and was a part of a couple wins for them last year. So I just think he's solid. I think he's an upgrade over what you had for the most part, especially with what they want in quarterbacks. But yeah, depth is a concern. It's something, you always think about the best case scenario and you're always imagining, Brandon Peters lining up against Iowa and you got a chance. It's like, that might not be the case, right? Or is Jamal Woods and Roderick Perry, like, are they going to be there in this game against this team where you need them compared to say like Calvin Avery's got to play 40 snaps? Like there's a big difference between some of those things. And that's the difference between teams like Wisconsin, Ohio State, Penn State a lot of times, and teams like Illinois or Purdue.
Yeah. And it's just, again, you build the program, you would have thought where this program has been building, you could withstand it a little better. It's just the cold truth that what we see right now, given what we've seen proven, that's not happening. Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm with you. I said bowl game, and I think that
which isn't ridiculous. I don't think
I think I can see that, but I can also see this going a little bit sideways. And I want to see if this team can stop those skids, right? I mean, they happened in a game where you would lose a little momentum and then it was just like gone. And that was the end of it. And then those scores looked horrible at the end. And, Wisconsin last year comes to mind. It got ugly, like flat out ugly, but it wasn't always.
Or how about Iowa? You're up 14-0 and they make a run, which is fine. That's going to happen, but they have a 21-14 lead. Just have a good drive, right? Like on defense or on offense that can kind of turn the tide. And it just felt like it snowballed, and it did kind of the year before as well. You think of the Eastern Michigan and, the Nebraska game where they gave up 21 straight points to end that game. And you were able to come back and get some turnover luck maybe against Wisconsin, and you took advantage of that. And of course, Michigan State, like you got down 28-3 and you found a way to make this furious comeback. More often than not, you're not going to be able to do that, right? Like more often than not, it's probably going to snowball. So yeah, being able to stop that kind of downhill effect, the players got to do it, right? They got to believe in it. Depth has to matter, talent has to matter, but coaching matters too. So we've repeated it over and over again, but it's amazing the apples to apples comparison we'll get in that.
It's good. It's one of the, like on the macro, it's one of the most interesting like subplots this whole season, right? Is like, it's largely the same team that went 2-6. I mean, they're a year older, but so is everybody else, right? Like I think sometimes the super senior thing, it does matter. I mean, ideally you prefer this than having like a bunch of sophomores and juniors or freshmen, sophomores.
Because if you didn't have a super senior thing, Joey, we'd be talking about a team that's probably going to go 2-10.
It'd be a good place for them to be. Yeah, right. Like I would think that would be fair, but like a lot of people have, some people, they've just naturally gotten older. Some teams like Illinois have taken advantage of this extra year. So I mean, I think that matters, but this is such, we'll see what it looks like. I mean, I would argue the schedule is difficult, right? I mean, the non-con's easily more difficult. So this is such an interesting subplot for coaching. And that's not to say Lovey's a bad coach. The college game, just for whatever reason, it didn't work. And we have at length pointed to reasons we think why. And the defense is 1, 2, and 3, I would suspect on that list. But that's really interesting. I do want to know, like, what do you think this looks like from a fan base? This is so silly to even ask this because like no one else is asking this for people. What does 1-0 look like for Illinois fans with a new head coach
against Nebraska?
Yeah,
there's a ton of excitement. I think UTSA, I don't know if you'll get the same amount of fans as you would for week 1 against Nebraska, but I already looked at next week's weather. Gonna be way better. It's like at 80 degrees. I think it's it's gonna be like 70 degrees, a 1-0 team, chance to go 2-0, people talking about you on Big Ten Network. Our podcast numbers are up probably. Like, no, I think there's some real cautious optimism, probably not even cautious. I think it's just going to be real optimism about what could happen the rest of the year. And it wouldn't mean they're making a bowl game, but it certainly means got a heck of a better chance if you start 1-0 and potentially 2-0. So I think it's everything you wanted that North Carolina game to be in Lovie Smith's first year. And they were just way more talented. Right. They were just way more talented than you. And after that Keyshawn Vaughn touchdown, just all went down for hill from there. And it told you, hey, this is going to be, it's going to take time, right, for Lovie Smith to do this. And you could see that on Saturday. Illinois fans might be reminded like, oh, this is a difficult job. Oh, this roster needs work. Right. And I think that's what Illini fans are hoping not to have. Is like, if you win, hey, maybe we can have a good year. We understand it's going to step back the year after because of the roster you inherited, but we'll have some momentum to sell like Jeff Brom had. So I think if they lose, fans are going to be like, yeah, it's still Illinois football. Like it's still a tough job. And even Brett Bielema with a great offseason and winning the offseason, it's going to take some time.
And then, by the way, you've got a basketball team that's going to be really stinking good around the corner. And it's what we've seen it, man. We've seen it covering this team. It's, hey, what's going on at Ubben, do you guys think? Meanwhile, there's a football game across the street. So it's an interesting dynamic. And that's not to say that they can't stabilize this, but it's also not to say it's going to happen on Saturday.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think there is a challenge and a depth to that challenge with this job. And truth be told, Brett probably knew it when he got hired. Right. I mean, it's no secret.
All right, Joey, let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's break down some of our individual bold predictions for Illinois football, maybe some team ones as well. That'll be next on the Illini Inquirer podcast. All right, let's make our individual bold predictions. Shall we start at quarterback, Joey Wagner, and a guy that is getting a sixth opportunity to be a Big Ten quarterback, had a really up and down, but promising 2019 season and ended it pretty well. As kind of this, tough guy, without many weapons around him towards the end of that Red Box Bowl season. Brandon Peters felt like kind of a beacon for what Illinois could be in 2020. And a lot of what my prediction was in 2020 was I thought Brandon Peters could be a top half quarterback. Of course, he missed 3 games with contracting COVID-19, but one great game, probably his most complete game ever at Nebraska, but otherwise 4 really poor performances. So do you have a bold prediction for Brandon Peters or Illinois quarterback play?
Goodness. I don't think he gets benched. I mean, that's kind of bold when you're talking about Illinois quarterbacks. And I asked him a little bit, and I understand why and maybe this was his honest feeling, but I wonder if like in 2 years, if I run into Brandon Peters after he's out of Illinois, if the answer would be the same. It's, dude, that's a cloud. Isaiah Williams was a 4-star cloud on that bench that got closer and closer and closer with every game. And I'm sure Brandon Peters had to feel that, right? How do you not? He's a smart guy. He knows that Isaiah was probably a better fit for Rod's offense. And I do wonder, and I'm not making excuses for him, I'm not in the business to do that, but I do wonder how much that impacted him. I mean, I keep coming back, and we've talked about this, Jeremy, this ridiculous Isaiah Williams gets a drive, first 3 downs against Wisconsin. On a 4th down, they put in Brandon Peters. That made beyond no sense. And then if you're Brandon, do you wonder, like, what is the rotation here, right? Like, what is happening? But my bolder prediction, I suppose, is one, he doesn't get benched. I think the numbers look a little bit more like 2019.
Yeah.
And that wasn't like, holy smoke season, but dude, there was legitimate buzz about Brandon Peters going into 2020. And a lot of it I thought was warranted, because frankly, Illinois hadn't had anything that sniffed close to that in a while. And he wasn't a net negative at quarterback. And at Illinois, that's like, oh my gosh, what the Brandon Peters team award for best quarterback, you may as well have named it. So I think it's 18 touchdowns. That's a lot at Illinois, but in the big scheme of things, that's not a lot of touchdowns, man. And, I would say 18, 19 touchdowns and maybe 7, 8 picks. And I'd call that a pretty good year if you think the rest of the offense does what you think it could.
Would a bold pick be that he's not top 8 in pass efficiency rating? Like, would that be bold? I don't know if that's bold enough, but I think that'd be okay as long as he's not what he was last year. Like, you kind of set the standard of, like, if he does what he did in 2019, maybe just a little bit more consistent. Like, I don't expect Brandon Peters to be top 5 quarterback in the Big Ten. I just don't. I've seen enough that, like, yeah, coaching can help, a scheme can help, but I still have concerns about him accuracy wise, leadership wise. I just feel like there's some games where he just kind of gets in the dumps and you can see it. And I think his teammates could feel it. So he's got to show me or show everybody, I think, that he can kind of get out of that kind of thing. He does take care of the ball, but it's been interesting that Brett Bielema and Tony Peterson have both been talking about, like, we need to take him to take care of the ball. It makes me wonder, are we missing something in training camp where he's starting to throw some picks here? So yeah, my bold prediction would be not top 8 in pass efficiency rating, but that's okay. Like, if he has his 2019 year, where I don't think he was top half in the Big Ten, like, that's fine. Like, if Illinois just has kind of a Wes Lunt kind of year, as long as the run game's good and the defense is improved, probably significantly here, I feel like they'll have a chance to do what they can do. Now, is capable of having, last year's Tanner Morgan season, which is 1,374 yards, like a 58 completion rate, 7 touchdowns, 128 pass efficiency. That's fine. Like, that'd be fine. Like, I expect Tanner Morgan to be a little bit better because we've seen him be a little bit better, but my expectations for him aren't through the roof. I just need to see him be consistent. Like, that's the biggest issue with him.
Maybe this is a lazy take, and I wish I was better at math to, like, somehow find a equation to prorate this, but, like, how do you prorate Jeff Driscoll with Tony Peterson and that against that competition to the Big Ten, right? Like, Jeff Driscoll put up pretty good numbers. I think it was like 4,000 yards, excuse me, in some capacity. Yeah, that ain't happening. But how do you prorate that to Big Ten competition, right? And like, if you can get something that would be the equivalent of that or close to the equivalent of that, and it's certainly not those gaudy numbers, that's good. And like Tony Peterson has found a way to connect quickly and effectively with quarterbacks. And we've seen Brandon with, at least physically, we understand he's got an arm, and we understand some of that accuracy. The concerns, everything's on the table with him at this point. Like, I don't think we're going to see something from Brandon and be like, oh, I didn't know he could do that, or oh, I didn't know that was a deficiency. I think we more or less know about what he's capable of doing, but we got to see him put it together.
Just the highs and lows are so different.
They are. They really are.
Be steady. Like, at the end of the year, like, if you're just having a bunch of 200-yard performances with a 60% completion rate and 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, I'll sign up for that. Like, I
go back to California.
Yeah, I'd sign up for that in an instant, and you're going to a bowl game. I just don't know if we can, because we just haven't seen that consistently. All right, running backs. My bold prediction: 3 rushers with 300+ yards. That's not too bold. Is that, or should I go 2 for 500+? I was deciding between those two, but I feel like I still feel like Chase Brown's the number 1 guy.
Yeah, he is.
And I would bet on him going over 600+ yards, and I'd probably go 800+ yards. But I feel like Reggie Love, Mike Epstein, Chase Hayden, I don't know which of the two, but I feel like 2 of those guys will go over 300.
Yeah, I like the 2 for 5.
Who would be your second? Like, who are you going with? You going Epstein?
Yeah, that's what
Would you be most surprised if Hayden was that second guy with 500+?
Would I be most surprised?
Yeah, like, would you, if you had to rank them, like?
Yeah, I think so. I do, and I just, because I haven't seen him, we've never seen him play at Illinois, right? Obviously, and it's been a while since he's really been a factor in college football. And I say that knowing that backs me into a guy who's been injury riddled a little bit, and a guy who had like 12 yards as a true freshman last year. So I understand. And now I say this, I'm like, I know the running back rotation is good, but man, I don't have a lot of evidence to support it. You know what I mean? Like, statistically, it's like, it doesn't really back what we think all the way.
Chase Brown is good. Like, we've seen him run, and it is a joy to watch him run the football. Mike Epstein, when healthy, is really good. I think we know Chase Hayden is talented. I think we know Reggie Love is talented. I think we know that this offense and this run game, no matter who they've kind of put there, whether it's Reggie Corbin or Dre Brown or Chase Brown, all talented. But you put them behind this solid to good offensive line, and they're going to produce. And I think this coaching staff and Bielema and Peterson, they're going to run the football. I feel like my confidence level for Illinois football, of all things they can do, is running the football. I'm like at an 8 to 10 that they're going to be a top 5 or top 6 rushing team in the Big Ten.
I'll put Mike Epstein at number 2.
There you go.
I mean, he's just the most proven. And look, I just went on about how they love Tank Wright. And some of Mike's issues have not been related to any of that. But if you can keep Mike Epstein healthy, I mean, there's a reason his yard per carry is 1 million, right? I mean, he's a good running back. He's proven it in the Big Ten. And I just think he's that guy if he's healthy, which is such just an enormous caveat. And you hate to say it, and you hate to keep going back to it, because I'm sure at some point Mike would rather talk about anything. He'd rather give us his home address and social security number, I think, than continue to go on about this. But I just think he's got a lot of the tools that they want, man. And we'll see. But Reggie Love intrigues the heck out of me. Those are my top. I mean, I don't know any more of the depth chart than you do or anyone listening to this does, but those 3 are the 3 guys at the top of my mind.
Yeah, I feel like Chase Brown's the hardest to bring down. Like, he just keeps churning his legs, and I think he might have as much top end speed as any of those guys. I feel like Mike just has a great overall skill set. I feel like he's the best blocker, the best receiver, one cut and go. I just feel like he's so efficient. And then Reggie Love, I feel like, is the best agility. Like, I think he can make people miss in the open field. Like, he's not quite Reggie Corbin, I would say, but he's a little bit bigger than Reggie was coming in. So they all got different skill sets. And Chase is kind of built like Dre Brown now, even though he didn't come into college like that. So it's a good group. All right, let's go to the passing game and receiver options, and not a lot of proven guys here, Joe. We've talked about that a lot. So, all right, my bold prediction is it's not even a receiver who leads this team in receptions. I'm going Daniel Barker, who's not being talked enough about The last 2 years, he has finished second on the team in receptions, second in receiving yards, one of the tops in receiving touchdowns behind Josh and Matt Torbebe. He's got a great rapport with Brandon Peters, who trusts him. Daniel's got some issues as a blocker at times, but he is a proven pass catcher. And while I would love to go with somebody else who Atlanta fans are pumped about, or even a Donnie Navarro who should be used more, I just think Daniel Barker can be a guy at the end of the year that has 40 receptions. And that wouldn't surprise me because I feel like he could have been used a little bit more here in past years. I just think in the seam, he's a matchup issue. And with this offense, I think they're going to use the tight end a lot. So I don't know if I go 40 receptions, but it wouldn't surprise me if he gets to that number. And I just don't see a guy having 60, 50 receptions on this team.
I think the leaders, whoever leads this, and that you're going to see maybe a couple guys in that 30 to 38, 40 range, right? 40 would be the high number to me, 41, 42. I don't, it's hard for me to go higher than that. And we have, I think, but largely, I don't know that I've heard that much about Daniel Barker from just people around who follow, and we should, man.
Yeah, I asked Ben Miller about him. I asked Ben Miller about him because I felt like no one was talking about it. And I'm like, have you seen, like, what's his next step? He goes, well, he's taking it. And they are very excited about him.
They should be. And we all this to do, right? And I get why we made like, oh boy, I bet Luke Ford's the happiest guy in the world that there's a tight end friendly offense coming in here. And all the while, Daniel Barker's just like, hey, right here too, man. Like he's really talented. He's proven it. And I think guys who, Brett Bielema's got a history. Ben Miller's got a history. They can make Tony Peterson. Yeah. They love tight ends. Like this isn't, we've heard the lip service. I would be floored if it was lip service this year. I'd absolutely be floored as you just kind of, one, you look at what they believe in, and two, what's around them. Like those are one of your best options in the passing game, period, regardless.
How about this bold prediction? The two tight ends on the team, Luke Ford and Daniel Barker, will have more receptions than the top two receivers. How about that?
Oh boy.
So like Donnie and Isaiah?
I would think so. Oh boy, that's a bold one because we just haven't seen it from Luke. And
I got Luke for about 20, 25, something like that.
So if you got Bart, so you're talking 60, roughly 60 between the two?
Yeah, 60, 65, something like that. I'm all in on this tight end thing, man. I think Barker's gonna be the one guy. I think Luke will be the next guy. But like I sit there and I go, hey, I like Brian Hightower. We'll see what he can put together. I think it's gonna be Donnie Navarro and Isaiah Williams getting the most, targets here outside of the receivers. And I just think Brandon's going to want to go to some big guys, man. Like he's had pretty good history of throwing it up to a big guy, and Barker and Ford are his guys.
I will take that actually, because I think Isaiah is going to lead the team in receptions. One, I think he's really good at football, and
two would be a fun story.
Two would be a really fun story. But they've not shielded away from this kid, and that to me is the most telling, the most striking, the whole 9 yards. If they didn't know, if there's a bit of doubt, right? Any other coach would say, he just switched from quarterback, and that gives him a heads up, but it's a hard switch and this, that, and the other. And they're just like, man, day one, he came in here, did this. And we're like, hello, sweet wide receiver. We're good here. And they've really, really doubled down, tripled down, everything they could do. They've not hidden from it. And I just think this is a coaching staff that's been around long enough to like not be duped if they didn't really believe it. And so to circle this back, I'm looking and I'm like, okay, let's peg him at, as I said, 37 to 42, which is, I think, still a little high. Where are the other 20 some odd coming from to get to that 60 number of Ford and Barker? And maybe it's Donnie, I think, but like
why he didn't play more last year. Donnie, no I get it, man. Like he had some more talented pieces, bigger people. I'm like, you need somebody who gets separation and get open. And Donnie, even though he's not the biggest, fastest, or strongest, he just found a way to get open. And like Brandon can go to it. He knows he'll be there. And I just didn't know why he didn't play a bigger role last year.
Donnie had, so when I've done this, and I kind of have talked to you a little bit about it, it's hard to look like 2020 happened, but if you're trying to make any comparisons, It's really hard to look at that as anything substantial. So Donnie had 27 receptions in 2019. So let's generously give Isaiah 33, 34, 35. That could fight it, right? That could get right up there with Ford and Barker. And like that is where I struggle a little bit, because I think Isaiah is going to be a really big deal here. And I think anytime people think Donnie Navarro might not be, I'm not saying the coaching staff does, but he gets overlooked a little bit just broadly from fans and sometimes from media. He does things, man. And like, he had 27 receptions when he had just shown up from Valpo, right? And I mean, he sat out the year, but like, it's hard.
Yeah.
That my bold prediction is those are your top two in receptions. I don't know how bold that is, because I like Brian Hightower. Top two wide receiver options, excuse me. And I think Isaiah leads the team, but Donnie just shows up all the stinking time, man.
See, the thing about Isaiah is I could see him having like 50 catches, right?
Yeah.
Or I could see him having 20 catches and 30 carries. I just don't know how they will use him. Are they using him like Rondale, where it's a slot receiver, true slot receiver, and you get him quick hits and then he goes? Or are you just putting the ball in his hands on jet sweeps, kind of like more like Wan'Dale Robinson, who did more of that, right? So I'm just really interested to see how they get him the ball and what kind of ways they get him the ball and how consistent he is as a pass catcher too. So that's not a terrible bold prediction. I thought you'd go Isaiah leading the team in receptions, and I think it'd be fun to see, man.
These are hard to do in college, but shuttle passes, those count, baby. That's one. That's one. I don't know, man. I agree with you, though. I think there's ways they can do it without throwing him the football. And that is such an intrigue. Here's what it's not bold at all. He's going to be a huge part of the offense. I mean, just an absolutely enormous, massive, all of the 9 yards part of this offense.
All right. How about, do you have any deep cuts or crazy ones? Like, I'm going one Tip Ryman touchdown.
Oh, heck yeah.
One Tip Ryman touchdown. And I'm going to go with Dale Von Campbell having like the 5th most receptions on the team. Just a random, like there'll be an injury and Dale Von comes in and plays and gets like 10 receptions or like 12 receptions on there. Maybe it's like 5th or 6th, but something like that. Just a name to know.
By week 9, we might be saying that Pat Bryant was one of the most ready true freshmen on this team.
There you go.
Because I think he's got a really good chance here. My deep cut, Max Rosenthal, over 1.5 rushing touchdowns.
Under.
He's got a neck roll. Fullback dives all the way there. He gets 1. I don't know that he gets 2, but I think he gets 1.
Yeah. All right. Let's, do we have any offensive line ones?
I have no questions about the offensive line at this point. I think right guard still, but yeah, I don't have that many questions.
All right. My bold one, 2 Illinois offensive linemen get drafted.
Palcho and Darren Lowe.
Yes. Palcho. Yeah. I think we're overlooking him a little bit, and he's got the knee injury to come back from. We got to see him. But I mean, this is an all Big Ten third team guy in 2019. He is a ferocious run blocker. I think he's playing a little odd position in college because he's long, right? And maybe he can play right tackle in the NFL. I don't think he's great at pass blocking, but I think he could be a road grading guard that could possibly play swing tackle as well. So if he's healthy, I think people are overlooking him a little bit, but I do think Illinois got like a top half tackle group in the Big Ten, which is saying a lot given the teams that are in the Big Ten. But that'll be my bold prediction. Those two are NFL draft picks next year.
Breakout season for Julian Pearl. And like, I know last year, I know that I think he could start at right guard. And as you said, I wonder, like, we had kind of kicked it around early in spring a little bit, but like, could he play tackle and could you move Palcho inside?
Yeah.
I mean, is that a possibility? I don't know that that'll happen, but I think there's too much of, Julian looks really good to not see Julian Pearl this year.
All right. I'm just going to throw this one out there. I don't think it happens. He was added for depth, and I think there'll probably be an injury, so he plays. But should we bring up the theory? Could they redshirt Jack Badovinac if he doesn't start? I wouldn't waste him on special teams is what I'm saying. So like, keep him under 4 games. He can redshirt, and then he's a starter for you next year as Jarasati and Kramer move on. Like, it wouldn't be a bad thing to have that guy in the middle of your offensive line, which is going to have huge questions in 2022. So I'm not predicting it. I'm just throwing out, I've thought that theory.
I think it could pass, but I also, here's, I mean, this is going to be a conversation for football, for basketball, and as we move forward until all these guys who have been around from last year with this COVID thing goes away and they've exhausted their eligibility. It takes two to tango here. One, the coaching staff's got to want them back, and I'm not saying that's not going to be the case for Badovinac. I think the bigger thing is, dude, a lot of people aren't hankering to stay around school for 6 years. Sitting Van Wilder, man.
Yeah.
Like I think people are gonna want to move on with their lives and collect paychecks. I have not spoken a word to Jack Badovinac. I don't know. I just think that so much thought goes into, okay, all these guys have what we knew of their eligibility plus one, and they do, but they've got to want it. It's got to work for both parties. And I don't know that always happens, but it is an interesting theory, right? Like you could do it, and there's nothing telling you can't do it.
Because he's played 4 years. I don't think he's already had 4 or 5, right? Like I should have probably thought about that. Like, did he? I forgot which year he got the Colgate, but yeah, it's just an interesting thought if it is possible, because he's definitely a known that they don't really have on the interior next year. So yeah, his first year was 2017. So he's played 4 years, but he had a free year. So if he's still got a redshirt year to use if he wants to. I think like that.
Yeah. I don't know how it works when you transfer school though. Because Alfonso Plummer did it in basketball. It just counts on your scholarship at that point. Yeah.
Just interesting. Just an interesting theory.
Could be done.
We'll see if it happens. All right, defense. This is where I struggle, man. This is where I really, really struggle. I'm going to throw one out there. I think Devin Witherspoon's going to be the best DB on this team. Really? I like Tony Adams. I like the known of Tony Adams. I think he's much better at cornerback. But Devin Witherspoon made some plays last year. He's so good against the run. He's this wiry guy who doesn't have any business throwing his face into like some of these tackles, but he does. He's one of the best tacklers on the team, especially in the open field. And then last year, he made some plays against Bo Melton and Rashad Bateman where he went up and stole the ball from those elite or really great Big Ten wide receivers. And you can tell Aaron Henry loves him. It sounds like he is the energy of that cornerback room, while Tony's kind of the quiet leader. So I'm going to go with Devin Witherspoon, kind of turns himself into a next level Big Ten cornerback who might be getting some, by the end of the year, could sneakily get like all Big Ten honorable mention or something.
I will go a little further down because I still think there's a lot of intrigue to me, and I'm not trying to knock Kendall Smith, but I think there's a lot of intrigue to me about that number 3 corner. Who might it be? I think it's Tavion Nicholson, and I might not be that bold because I feel like we've talked about him, but like this guy was really buried last year on the depth chart, and it just sounds like he's had a little bit of a, he's connected with this coaching staff and he's played fairly well. And frankly, if there were ever a time to be an unproven cornerback at Illinois trying to find your way onto the field, it's literally right this second. And I think he can be that guy who evolves into a third cornerback and somebody you feel okay. I mean, I wouldn't say you're thrilled because he did not play in a game last year and you've never seen it, but he could be that guy. I'm interested in him.
All right, mine in the front. I'm going to go with Johnny Newton is top 3 on the team in tackles for loss, which is a big number for a defensive lineman. Okay, so that's probably double digits. I'm shooting for there. You would expect Owen Carney to be very high up there. I'd expect Jake Hansen to be very high up there, and Isaiah Gay should be right. Those are the 3 guys I'd kind of list pretty high in that group. Maybe the other linebacker. I think Johnny Newton is so talented, and he's up to 290 pounds. Last year he was playing at 270 as a true freshman. And the Purdue game might've been the best game by an Illinois defensive lineman last year, where he made a huge impact. So this is a really bold prediction by me, but I just think Johnny Newton, even though Keith Randolph thinks he's really good at what he does, I think Johnny's a little bit different of a player. If he gets upfield, he disrupts things. I think Keith's going to be more of a stalwart kind of run stopper. I think Johnny can be a big factor on the front of this defense.
I would imagine it's going to help playing next to Rod Perry, who just eats some guys up on that line, and that might help help Johnny. It's not bold to say that Owen Carney's going to. Last year, it would have been bold to say Owen Carney's going to lead the team in sacks, but I don't think the team leader in sacks has more than 7. And I know that's still, decently high number, but I think that's the top for me, right? I can't imagine somebody with 8 or 9 or, Wally Batiku was so dominant in non-conference that year that he had, I think it was 9.5. And then it fizzled off. And I still need to see a little bit more from Owen Carney. And I know this coaching staff has gone out of their way to praise him, but I just.
Well, 4.5 of his 5 sacks came in 2 games, right? He had 3 against Purdue and 1.5 against Nebraska. So can he be consistent with it? Yeah.
So I think so let's say we agree it's not bold to say he's number 1 on the team in sacks. I think that's what we expect. I don't think it's higher than 7. Is Seth Coleman number 2? Or do we still think because I don't know how much he's going to play.
I go, my bold prediction might be Isaiah Gay leads the team in sacks.
Really?
That might be I think he's a more natural pass rusher. Owen Carney to me is more of like I think he's a good overall player. I think he's a pretty consistent, like when it comes to just down to down stuff. I think most of his sacks last year, if I'm remembering correct, like most of them were second effort sacks. Like it was just like, hey, hang in there, keep going at the quarterback, 3 seconds for, and yeah, he got the sack. I think Isaiah Gay is that guy who can get him like that, like quick. It's just the concerns about Isaiah Gay is, again, consistency. Like towards the end of 2019, I thought he was their best edge rusher. And then in 2020, he had some good performances, but then Seth Coleman was starting games over him late last season. So my bold prediction would probably be, I just think Isaiah Gay is more naturally talented pass rusher. It's just, we haven't seen it. I think Owen Carney's floor is way higher than Isaiah Gay's.
Are we sleeping on Isaiah Gay a little bit?
I mean, I never have. I've always thought he could be really good. It's just, I think this defense is so, like, being a 2-point stance edge rusher, stand-up edge rusher is perfect for Isaiah Gay. That's always what he's been. It was kind of like Lovie Smith, recruited him, saw the talent in him, but it just felt like hand on the ground defensive end. That's never really what Isaiah Gay was going to be.
I'll say I don't think Jake Hansen breaks the single season fumble or breaks the career fumble record. Which sounds silly because he had I think 9 in 2019, something just stupid. Like that is an absolutely
7 in 9 games. Yeah.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Right. Like that is
going to get 2 against Adrian Martinez on Saturday because Adrian fumbles a lot and you're going to be like, oh, that was dumb.
And then I'm going to have to delete this again from the internet. This will not be here on Monday. Let's be upfront about it. This bold predictions podcast is gone.
That's why they're bold predictions, though. These are kind of like stupid, borderline irresponsible, right?
Yeah, I just think that's a lot. And obviously, look, obviously you always want to get takeaways, right? Like that's, but Lovey, like really that we wrote about it until our hands fell off. That is some. But now does this staff, we just don't know what this staff prioritizes. Is it rip, strip, and yank, or is it get him to the ground, right? We just don't know. And we'll see that on Saturday. But I think he leads the team in tackles. That's not at all bold.
Yeah.
I just don't think he breaks that record. And maybe he doesn't need a lot. I think he needs 4 to break it, if I'm not mistaken. To fully break, I should probably look at that before I just start screaming.
Yeah, he's got 4 to break it.
Yeah.
Which Whitney Merciless have 9 in one season. Like that was it's the best.
That's what I was at. Yeah, yes, correct. That's insane. Yeah. I don't even understand that. I cannot wrap my mind around that.
It's the most dominant. I think if you look in the history of Illinois athletics, and this, I'm not using this like lightly because Dick Butkus played here, Red Grange played here, but in the modern era, I don't know if there's been as dominant of a single season as Whitney Merciless. Like I know what Brandon Lloyd did. I know what David Williams did. I know what some of those quarterbacks did. I know the running backs like Rashard Mendenhall had a ridiculous 2007. Like Juice Williams and Regis Ben and Jay Lehman. Like I get it. Rashard Mendenhall was awesome, just absolutely awesome. But Whitney Merciless's year was as dominant of a single performance as I think I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, dude, those numbers are stupid. I don't know. I think it's just hard, man. Forcing fumbles like that's really hard.
Yeah. Okay. Any deeper cuts on defense? I'll go with one. I'm going to go because of injuries at some point. Keontae Curry, freshman, starts a game.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I totally. And here's the thing: I don't know where the heck it's going to be. It could be at corner. It could be at star. It could be at safety. I have absolutely no idea. It's very similar to what I think Eddie Smith can be defensively, right? Where you can play him at a couple positions or at that star. But I said Taz, but Keontae Curry is. I mean, I think he could be a guy. Yeah, I'd give him a start.
Okay. Do you have any schedule things here?
Call. That's a good call.
Like, do you have like a game you have circled as like, yep, this is the upset pick? I did not really pick any upsets in my season. Like, I should have picked a game like, oh, they lose to you at TSA, but beat Virginia. Like, that would have been the fun thing, kind of a whirlwind there.
I'll say they're 4-0 Friday night against Maryland.
Wow.
Why not? I mean, I'd say the hardest one is week 0 against Nebraska, right?
Virginia's pretty good.
Virginia's pretty tough, but dude, here's the thing: if they're 2-0, they're buying all of it, and they're probably already buying it. But like, the hell with it, I just do it, right? If I got to do something stupid, bold, that's obviously going to end up biting me in the butt in 3 weeks, I'll do it.
I want to say this is the year they beat Northwestern. I really do.
I thought that too.
8 starters, right? They only return 8 starters. They lose their quarterback. Cam Porter's out for the year. Wide receivers, they lost all their main wide receivers. Greg Newsom's gone. Their linebackers, Patty Fisher and Blake Gallagher, are gone. So I should pick Illinois to beat Northwestern, right? But every time I think Northwestern's going to have a down year, they're awesome. Every time I think they're going to be awesome, they have a down year. So it's the opposite. I can never pick against Pat Fitzgerald against Illinois because one, he's won 6 in a row, and I think 10 of 14 against Illinois. But every time I feel like they're vulnerable, they end up not being vulnerable at all.
I'll also say it straight up: if this were week 5 against Purdue, I'd be more in place of Purdue. I'd be more likely to do it. I have not seen Illinois healthy against Northwestern. I will not get away from that. It's the last week of the season. I have to see that Illinois is continuously healthy, and if they are, then maybe I'd be a little more likely to go that route, given everything you just said about what Northwestern lost. But dude, that is like, we have seen it with the team with no depth and injuries hit, and you start getting into the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and the injury report is like 400 people long. You're trying to figure out who in the world could possibly catch a pass. And by the way, it's raining and freezing, and enjoy the game, kids. It's really hard.
But all the kids are at home. All the kids are at home because it's Thanksgiving break.
I did skip this, and I'll say that I want to go back to the quarterbacks. I think we know 1 and 2. I think Ryan Johnson's the 3rd quarterback.
Ooh, yeah. That's a deep cut. Love it.
That's it, man. I think he is the 3rd quarterback on this team. And maybe I'm wrong, because Brett Bielema said something that Matt Robinson last night on his radio show, that Matt Robinson had a nice camp. But I thought Ryan Johnson was kind of a sneaky, solid little find. I mean, as long as you know what you expect him to come in and be, which is backup is like, hey, look at this. I mean, he's climbed up a little bit. That 2.5 to 3 on the depth chart, I think he's the 3rd.
Which says a lot about how different and what they thought about the quarterback room. Like I thought Rod Smith really improved the talent in the quarterback room, but it's something completely different from what this staff wants. If you have, we already know 3 of the top 4 guys are Brandon Peters, right? Ryan Johnson, who they just brought in as a D2 transfer from Northern Michigan, Art Sikowski, and Matt Robinson's hanging on in that 4 deep, but Karan Taylor's playing safety, where I just don't think it's an expectation he gets on the field very much. Isaiah Williams, that wide receiver. Deuce Spann has fallen behind a D2 transfer. Like Samari Collier came in, and I think he's got some potential, but a long way to go. Like I don't think Deuce is going to stick quarterback. And if he does, it might be somewhere else other than Illinois. So I just don't know if I'm going to see him in that 3 deep at some point. That just tells you how much of a renovation. We talked about receiver. That quarterback room's undergoing a huge renovation. I think it continues this offseason. Like I would expect them to be in the transfer portal again to add some competition to Art Sikowski and whoever's left in that room, whether it's Johnson or Matt Robinson or Samari Collier and Donovan Leary, right? Like I'm not counting on Donovan Leary to be a 2 or 3 on my depth chart next year.
All right. So let's say it's October 9th. Wisconsin's in town. James McCourt is preparing for what he hopes is another moment where he passes out at the bottom of his team. Who has played their way into a starting spot that week? That's week 5, 6. That's the 7th game of the season.
It's a good question. You're not telling me how good they are, huh?
I'm not telling you how good they are. I'm not even injury wise. This isn't like so-and-so got hurt and now they've got to put this in. As somebody who just Devin Witherspooned their way into a starting spot.
I would have said this if we weren't talking about it, but like I would have said Quan Martin. I just love the way he ended last year, but I would expect him to start week 1. I think he played as well as any safety last year. It's so hard because so many of these guys I feel like givens, right?
That's
like
what I'm saying, yeah. There's very little room to operate.
There is a drop off. And that's what's such the concern of 2022 is you go from Brandon Peters to somewhat known, but do you feel satisfied with Art Sikowski going as your no doubt number 1 next year? Running back, you're fine, right? But wide receiver, is it Jafar Armstrong or Eddie? Like, is it Eddie Smith or Jafar Armstrong after, more months with this staff and the guys in front of them struggling, whether it's Casey Washington doesn't play all that well. And they like, all right, Jafar, get in there. We need to see what you can do. Or, maybe Prather Hudson or Quan Martin or Sidney Brown don't play well. And they're like, Eddie Smith, we need some talent in there. We need somebody to make some plays. So probably Jafar or Eddie, I would say, if they don't, aren't starters right away.
And we expect Prather Hudson to start at the star position when that's out there. Yeah, I think Eddie Smith makes sense to me. I think Jafar, I just don't know. I mean, we haven't heard a lot really about either one of these guys. I don't want to put Jafar out there. Like it hasn't been much there. Maybe it's because we've not asked. I don't know. But Eddie Smith makes sense to me to be that guy because it's exactly what we talked about with Curry. I think he can play. There's a couple different spots on the field that if someone's not playing well, you can slot him in there, be it safety, nickel, or corner.
Or maybe it's somebody like Badovanak or Pilstrom. If Julian Pearl does start and struggles or something like that. Like
or maybe it's Julian Pearl, right? I mean, who leads the team in interceptions?
I think it's Devin.
Really?
Yeah. Because I think they're going to be concerned about Tony. Forget a little bit about 31 over there. I should probably take a safety.
I was going to say, I'm taking Sidney. I mean, Sidney's got a knack for it a little bit. He's got to be on the field. He's got to be in the right coverage, which struggled with last year. But
I'd take Devin or Quan. I think that's who I'm taking.
Quan's a good call. It's crazy. I'm the one who could not get away from buying into all the interceptions this guy had as a freshman. I completely overlook him now.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of the two safeties. And I don't think it's a lot, by the way. I don't think it's a lot of interceptions.
All right. So I tweeted out that we were doing our bold predictions pod and people within a half hour. Here's some of them that I got. 9-3 when we make it to the Big Ten championship game, Eric said.
Is Eric building Brett Bielema a statue?
Yeah. You would after that first year, right?
Oh my gosh. The Great West Hall brought to you by Brett Bielema at Memorial Stadium.
Drew said we upset a top 25 team. What would be like, not the team, like you're not predicting the upset, but the most likely, like you're sitting there like, man, if they beat off the 25 team, like if they beat a 25 team, like who would it be?
Well, you got to look at how many teams are going to be in the top 25. And so it's not Penn State.
No, I think too much talent. I think Iowa would be it. Because I don't know if Northwestern's going to be in the top 25, right?
I don't think Purdue will be either, right?
I don't think Virginia will. There's not many opportunities. It's Wisconsin, Penn State, probably Iowa, maybe Minnesota if they're having a good year, maybe Northwestern.
I think and I don't think they beat Iowa, but I think the most likely candidate there would be Iowa.
Yeah, I predicted that as a one-score game. Wisconsin, Penn State, I didn't have as close. I don't like those matchups whatsoever. I know what happened 2 years ago against Wisconsin. I also remember what happened last year and like 12 years prior to that.
I think I messaged you this. I don't feel bad saying it out loud. When Jake Ferguson goes to the league for the tight end from Wisconsin, he has got to give Lovey some sort of portion.
Those fourth round highlights by Mel Kiper are going to have a lot of Illinois.
Oh my goodness, man. I can already see empty Camp Randall, Jake Ferguson, just no one's even near him, just doing his thing. Quickly, any game winners for James McCourt?
I mean, he has one a year.
That's what I'm saying. You're going against the odds, really. It's bold to say no.
I think they're going to have a lot of close games. Like I do. I think they're gonna have a lot of close games. I think a lot of these teams are very even, and that's what's so difficult about the schedule. Is like you said earlier, it's a difficult schedule. I don't know if I call it difficult. It's just there's not a lot of. It's actually a pretty advantageous one for what the Big Ten is. There's just not a lot of givens. Like I can't sit there and go, yep, that Rutgers is a no doubt win. Like, well, Illinois should be favored, and I feel like they need to win that game if they want to have a successful season. That's very difficult. Like they're a much better team than they were.
My candidates for if it happened would be Rutgers or Virginia.
Virginia sounds like a good one.
Out east, just
teams still feeling each other out. Yeah.
Yep. People partying in Champaign early.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some more of these. Backup quarterback Art wins 3 games.
No.
That'd have to be an injury, like a bad injury.
Yeah, I think so. I say that because I feel like I'm not giving the credence to the idea that Brandon could struggle and get benched, but just in the words that they're saying, it is a little hard for me to feel like the leash is short enough to get benched and then get benched early enough where Art could win 3 games.
Yeah, I think Brandon would have to struggle a couple games to get benched. But I do think I felt like last year they should have benched Brandon probably midway through that Iowa game. Even though he had an unbelievable start to that game. It was a 10 of 11, 2 touchdowns. But then he was really bad after that. I thought they left him in too long the next game. I think it was Northwestern. It was like, get somebody else in there. I don't think they'll be as married if he has those kind of performances, but I think he'll be better. Just how much better. AA Cards. We start 0-2, beat Penn State on the road. Defense greatly improves over the course of the season, and the Lads send us to a bowl game. Then we beat Northwestern at home on a walk-off field goal. That's a lot of bold predictions right there. 0-2, beat Penn State.
Look, I don't know what AA Cards' financial situation is like, but if you put a small bet on all of those things happening, I will happily take 10% of whatever you win if that happened because we read it out loud.
Yeah. Wes, Chase Brown receives Heisman votes. Okay, is the guy who has been all aboard the Chase Brown train since he committed to Illinois. Wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go quite that far, but I mean, I think Chase Brown, like if he stays healthy, it would not shock me if he got to 1,000 yards, but that is very difficult, right? We know how difficult that is. And in modern football, they're going to run a lot of running backs. They're going to want to keep him fresh. So I don't see him having 300 carries this year, but if he's got 200 carries, he might be around that number. So, but that's not Heisman stuff. Like Heisman stuff is 150 plus yards per game.
And remember how Reggie Corbin got there, the last one to get 1,000. It was like a couple just mammoth long runs. And I'm not saying Chase cannot do that, but Reggie was a little more, I mean, he benefited like heck from those really long runs. I don't think Heisman vote's probably a pretty firm no for me. But if there were 2 guys you had to say would be first team all Big Ten candidates, who would those 2 guys be? Or more, but I don't think it's more.
I know it's a boring pick, but Jake Hansen.
Yep.
And then I think I'd go Vidarian.
Just the sheer number of offensive linemen in the Big Ten scares me. For programs that are going to get a little more love, right, traditionally with offensive linemen. So Chase would be somebody if he comes close to what, but then again, like Ohio State's got a running back, right? Like, Penn State's going to have a running, like people are going to have running backs. So it's hard. I think Jake is like the one I feel most comfortable in saying, like, if there were somebody, but then I'm probably caught somewhere in stereotypes about Illinois, right? And other programs are going to play into it, but somewhere with Vidarian and Chase Brown is my next grouping, and I don't think those are very likely.
Maybe Carney, if you have enough sacks,
they're going to get some attention.
Sure. Phillips had 9.5 sacks, I think, and he was first teamer.
What about? I mean, it's not Isaiah, right? There's just too many. Ohio State's going to have how many first teamers on this?
Why? I mean, seriously, loaded in the Big Ten.
Parker Washington,
especially that Jahan Dotson is great. I know Ottman Bell got kind of hurt in training camp, but he's really good. In Minnesota, Nebraska's got some talented guys, so pretty loaded group.
Where do you put Daniel Barker? I mean, if you got Daniel Barker at 35, 40 catches,
he'd probably be picked on one of the teams or honorable at least. But Ferguson's still in the Big Ten, so he's always got good tight ends.
Laporta's pretty solid.
Yeah. So I think it'd be difficult to get there, but if you have like 50 catches, you got a great chance of doing something like that. Illinois finishes, Andy says, above Northwestern in the Big Ten West. I can't say no to it because Northwestern does do this up and down thing. So maybe this is the down year, and it's based on the roster, it's a decent year to pick the down year. It's just I can never do that with Pat Fitzgerald. I know it's not popular around here to say. I have too much respect for that guy to pick Northwestern to be bad.
I cannot believe every Big Ten coach should personally drive him to Hallis Hall this offseason and just make the Bears throw him out of there, right? I mean,
I'd be fine with it. I would approve of that if I were actually as a Bears fan on this podcast.
I understand Ryan Day's like the hot shot in the Big Ten. I get that. And I'm not saying Pat Fitzgerald's the best coach in the Big Ten, but man, I cannot imagine.
Ryan Day reunion with Justin Fields isn't a bad idea.
I just can't imagine Big Ten coaches would have been sad to see him go, right? Like,
Illinois fans should be pumped about that if that happened. One, he's a good coach, and I think he'd resonate well with NFL players. Now, he'd have to hire a really good offensive coordinator, in my opinion, but it's the one job I think he'd leave Northwestern for is the Bears, because his kids could still live in the area. It'd be perfect for him. Plus, you'd get him the heck out of Northwestern.
That's what I'm saying, man. It's I cannot believe Big Ten coaches didn't personally drive him there.
All right. Sean said Illinois 6-0 heading into homecoming game against Wisconsin. It's a great way to wrap up the podcast because in August, there are so many possibilities. It's hope. It springs eternal this time of year.
Hey, I got 4 with you, Sean. I'm not buying the next 2. Actually, I guess if I say that, the only one I'm not buying is Maryland and wait, 6-0 isn't right, is it? Yeah. I guess I'd be not buying Maryland or Purdue.
Yeah.
Oh man. Sean's not crazy. Can we get the last one? Corey says Illinois wins 1 game by forfeit due to COVID. I don't. This isn't the SEC.
Well, here's the thing. I think that's very less likely this year to happen because in the Big Ten, at least, I think we've seen very high vaccine rates, right? And that doesn't mean they can't get it. Obviously, if you have a vaccine, there could be some breakthrough cases. But the point is you're not going to have this contact tracing, which is what Illinois had, 2 guys that got COVID during that time when the Purdue game and Minnesota game. Then a couple guys late in the year. I think Tony Adams got it late in the year. But most of those guys out were due to contact tracing. With the vaccine, those guys aren't out due to contact tracing, right? You got to test positive to be out. And I think that's going to be 10 guys have to test positive in 1 week to even be in a conversation. Even then, I don't think that's going to happen. So I think that's very unlikely, very unlikely.
Yeah. And it's exactly, remember last year, remember these guys lived 3, 4, 5 guys lived together, right? That's how you saw the big numbers. It was all roommates. You can trace it back all you want. This wasn't the whole quarterback room, the whole X number room. This was just all roommates. So I think you're right. And frankly, I just hope, man, I don't want to deal that Ohio State game was such a pain because one is we like doing our job. They like to play and you just don't want that, man. It stinks.
I think it's a reminder though, that we could have guys miss the game.
Sure. Yeah, that's possible.
Positive COVID test. Like, I mean, I think they're trying to be smart about, hey, should we go to this setup? They're masking in university. Obviously they do they don't have to test anymore when they got vaccines, but there are precautions that they have. But at the same time, you could have a guy have a breakthrough case and miss a game like that still can happen. And I think you'll see that at some point with Illinois this year, right? That'd be a surprise if it doesn't.
But it's not, from what one of the Big Ten's told us, nothing. So it wouldn't be 3 games, right? And that is like the whole holy smokes difference year to year.
Feels like they would, I probably should ask this, but it feels like they'd just go through the normal, like, all right, here's your, quarantine period. We'll do our heart screening, and then you're back within a week and a half, I would imagine.
Well, what if you test negative? I don't know. You just don't know. I'm assuming CDC guidelines are going to be, part of this here, but I don't think it's likely that games are going to get canceled. Boy, I hope not.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking like the SEC or the ACC were very much more lenient on those guys coming back. So it was like 7 to 10 days, right? I think Trevor Lawrence missed 1 game and then he came back, which,
contact tracing in the Big Ten is more just in contact tracing.
Yeah, they're much more nervous about the myocarditis issue, which I think was well-intentioned. But obviously hurt teams like Illinois in that season. It didn't hurt teams like Ohio State that they canceled the game. All right. I think we threw enough bold predictions out there, unless you got any more there, Joey.
No, I'm scrubbing this from the internet Monday morning when all of mine go awry. So I'm saying I don't want to set up any false hope that this is going to be there Tuesday. I'm telling you.
All right. Everybody enjoy the game. Enjoy the week. We'll be on after the game for our post-game podcast. Have actual football to break down, some actual evidence on the field of what this all looks like. I'll be like, maybe we should roll back the expectations a little bit, or hey, look what the heck Brett Bielema it can do at Illinois against Nebraska. And Scott Frost, a little nervous.
Can I get one more bold prediction? One more. I want to hear yours too. First play of the game is what? Offensive play, I should say.
Play action pass. I gotta go. My guy Daniel Barker over the seam.
Luke Ford. It happens again. With
Luke Ford, first play of the year.
Oh my God!
It's a new era.
Perfect. I like to think of the fireworks going off after a completed pass in the middle of a drive for a Luke Ford first catch.
The fireworks go off. Isaiah Williams, does he get because you could tell Tony Peterson's excited to use him. He goes, I hope I think he said some point during his press conference. And I think you transcribed it. Was basically, I hope his first play is a big one.
Can you do that? I think Brandon turns around, hands it to Chase and says, go Chase, go. And Chase gets 5 or 6 yards and the tone is set. Honorary mention to a Luke Ford 5-yard reception, and the place goes absolutely wild.
Yeah, Bronx cheer, the first play of the season. Yeah, I just kind of want to go the opposite of what I expect, which is probably just a simple handoff to Chase Brown. That makes the most sense in the world, and it would be very on brand. But I wonder if Bielema's got some showman to him. So, and Tony Peterson might have some showman to him too, and to get the crowd into it. But you also don't want a turnover, so I can also just be like,
oh my God,
Chase Brown. Run behind Alex Palczewski and Doug Kramer.
Can you imagine you ask Brandon Peters to throw it to the moon and it gets picked off on the first offensive play of the Beal? Oh my God. Oh no. I'd get the heck out of there before I'd close Twitter forever. It's over.
All right. That's our bold predictions podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We'll talk to you after the game. Everybody stay cool, have fun, hydrate a little bit before you get into the game. And we will talk to you on Saturday night. Everybody take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time on the Illini Inquirer podcast.